If you think you know the best debut of the 90s, you don't know shit.
Don't worry, I will not be talking like that this entire review. Now, when we think of debut films in the 90s, we think of Quentin Tarantino with, like, Reservoir Dogs. But the Wachowskis came on the scene with Bound. And what was advertised as just another sexy noir turned out to be a rich, layered, feminist take on the gangster genre. With swooping camera moves, excellent performances, godly cinematography, and a script as tight as a drum, Bound just might be the #1 debut of the 90s. Bound is a neo-noir that follows two women. One, Corky, she's an ex-con just trying to make ends meet when she takes a job as the super for an apartment building, an apartment where the gangster Caesar and his girlfriend Violet happen to live. Corky is an out lesbian, but Violet isn't. And one day when Violet invites Corky over to fix her pipes, literally, Violet reveals not only her attraction, but later her plan. She needs Corky's help to steal $2 million from Caesar that he's holding for the mob. Soon Corky and Violet fall into love in a dangerous relationship that could expose both of them, expose their plot to steal the money, and possibly cost them their lives. It's hard to believe that this film is practically 30 years old. But in the 90s, especially 1996, we were still in that honeymoon phase of independent cinema. I mentioned Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, but you also had Kevin Smith's Clerks, Richard Linklater's Slacker, and truthfully, the directors that had queer debuts usually didn't have long careers. But the Wachowskis encased their queer story in the trappings of genre, notably the gangster film and the neo-noir, with a touch of erotic thriller. The 90s had no shortage of thrillers. Erotic, like Your Basic Instinct, Your Body of Evidence, but also, to bring it back to Tarantino, your Tarantino knockoff thrillers, your Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, your Truth or Consequences New Mexico, and the same year, 1996, 2 Days in the Valley, a comic everyone is connected thriller that really doesn't work, especially because it doesn't quite commit to the comedy, or the sex, or the violence. Well, Bound doesn't really have any comedy, but it absolutely commits to the sex and the violence. Because first and foremost, Bound is pulp. And I guess you could say pulp like Pulp Fiction. We're talking pulp in the classic sense, like the 30s gangster films. I mean, it's your same setup, a desperate character that gets in over their head with a more sophisticated lover. The spin on this film is that those two characters happen to be women, which not only intensifies the sex, but it intensifies the violence. Because what the Wachowskis do here is expose the misogyny inherent in the gangster genre, where women are made to look pretty, keep their mouths shut, and if they do have agency, a la the femme fatale, they're usually punished for it by the end. And part of the fun of this plot is seeing how they use their femininity to their advantage. And even down to the casting of Gershon and Tilly, the Wachowskis subvert expectations. I mean, just a year before, Gershon was in Showgirls, the camp classic from Paul Verhoeven, where she's uber feminine, uber hot, uber naked, and uber catty as hell. But then you have Tilly, who is known for ditzy characters, comic characters, who here is playing up her feminine wiles. But what both actresses do brilliantly here is hold two competing ideas in their performances. But as their enemy here, Joe Pantoliano, he's playing up the archetype. He had been a character actor for like 10 years, but this, and then later The Matrix, were really what put him on the map. He's a little like Joe Pesci in that vein, the small guy with a mouth who can be the wild card. He's got a goofiness to him, so we can't quite take him seriously as a threat, until that anger bubbles through and we realize that this guy does mean business. But this wouldn't be one of the best debuts of the 90s if the movie just settled on that. It's probably also one of the best looking movies of the 90s, because the Wachowskis used future Matrix DP Bill Pope to expand our visual ideas of what a one-setting film can be, because this movie only really takes place in a few rooms in an apartment complex. From the opening shot, we know we're in the hands of filmmakers that really want to show off, especially wide-angle macro shots that enlarge certain objects, like a tumbler of whiskey and especially a gun on a table. But it's not just tricks, it's also the way the film feels, because Pope's lighting, which is incredibly soft and almost angelic on the faces of the actresses, creates softer edges for a noir, which sometimes, especially in the 90s, were gritty and dank. Maybe that's a little of that feminine edge the Wachowskis infuse into it, which goes against the controlled chaos and coiled tension of the heist plot. My relationship to this movie is kind of funny, because I came to it way after The Matrix, and Bound was one I always remembered from the MTV Movie Awards of 1997, where this film was nominated for Best Kiss. And you know what? It might have been the very first lesbian kiss I ever saw in any medium, which, if you were a little boy in the 90s, blew my mind. So for a lot of us millennials, a lot of us 90s kids, our first entry into Bound was sex, which I assume the Wachowskis expected because that's how they pull the bait and switch. And in some ways, the entire careers of the Wachowskis have been a bait and switch. They were always focused on grander ideas and more philosophical readings than just pure spectacle. Since this film's debut 30 years ago, both have come out as trans, which gives a whole nother reading to this film. It becomes something that breaks the mold of the box it's been put in, feeling there is more and wanting to break out the confines of your identity. It makes it an important and transcendent thriller. So I can marvel at Bound as the sexy curio that it was from the 90s, but 30 years later I can appreciate it for what it also is. One hell of a genre-bending film debut. 30 years later, Bound is an expertly crafted, acted, shot, and written thriller that is sexy and stylish and absolutely one of the best debuts of the 90s. I give Bound an essential 4.5 stars out of 5. Now, why didn't I give it 5 stars? Well, it's kind of simple, because only 3 years later, the Wachowskis gave us a perfect immortal film, The Matrix. If you like this review, please like and subscribe.
Or follow me on Letterboxd at RamirezS316. Oh boy, I think I'm gonna end up doing this voice the rest of the day. It's quite addictive.